Okay, people, so back again, going through Wes Bos's awesome JavaScript 30 course. I've been going out of order, so now I'm back on day one, actually, the drum kit. He didn't really leave us with a to-do on into this, so I'm just going to walk through here. Just again, I'm doing this mostly to reinforce my understanding of what's going on here. So maybe someone will get something out of this as well. So what happens here? Again, I'm going to assume you've done this or at least looked at it, so I'm not going to go through everything, but let's just start with the JavaScript. So again, this is just a function declaration. It's not doing anything until somebody tells it to, right? So same thing here. Well, first of all, this is a function declaration for playing a sound, right? So we'll get to what it all does, but so far at this point, nothing's happening. Okay, and here's another function declaration. We're not calling either one of these functions yet. Okay, still not calling any functions. We're defining a constant variable called keys, which is the results of calling this document.query selector all. So we're finding anything in this file that has the class of key. And since there's more than one of those, it's all of these, we get a node list, right? Which is an array-like object. It is not an array exactly, so it doesn't have all the methods. But it does have for each. That is one that it does have, so we can still use for each. And why are we using for each? Because we want to put an event listener on every one of these things. Okay, and that's exactly what we're doing here. So we've got the keys. Is a list of all those things. How many are there? 7 of them, I think. 7 or 8, whatever it is. Oh, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of them. Okay. Looks like so it's looping through, and for each one, it's adding event listener. And what is it listening for? It's looking for a transition end. As you may recall from the video, when you over here and you press a key, the transition is that changing the CSS from this default state to the highlighted state, going from the black outline to the yellow outline. Okay, so it's waiting for the transition to end before it does what we're asking it to do. So remember, for an event listener, you say what you're going to add it to, right? What's listening? Is this key, right? Or this div with the, in our case, a div with the class of key. We're going to add an event listener. We're listening for a CSS transition to end, a CSS transition that's associated with this element to end. And when it ends, we're going to run this, we're going to call this function. So now we're finally calling the function remove transition. Okay, so let's see what happens when we call that function. We call that function remove transition, and it takes an event, right? Okay. Right, all right, so we're listening for the event. It takes that very same event, right? And we're going to say if that event, which has all these different properties on it, right? We're saying if property name is not transform, return. Meaning, so if this is true, it's going to stop right there and get out of this function. It's going to return, right? So it's never going to do this. So basically, want only if it's doing the transform are we going to do this piece. Okay, so let's assume that it is transform. The reason he did that because there's a whole bunch of other things that happen on that event, right? So we just want to know about this piece. Because that's the transform is the changing the CSS bit over there. Okay, so then it says this dot class list. So what's this in this scenario here, right? It's not this this function. It's what's calling this function, right? So what's calling this function is the key, right? So it's the div. And if we, as he showed in the video, if you just console log this would prove that that is in fact the case. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, so there it is. Let's do this so we know which one it is. Right. So why is it doing two? I'm not sure why it's console logging twice on each of those. Have another console log in here somewhere? I'm not sure why it's doing that. Is there more than one? At any rate, we know that this is referring to the key, which is calling, waiting for the event and calling the function. So the this in this case is the key, or this element, right? So anyway, so the element, right? We're going to do class list. Oops, I'm remove playing. What does that do first? Oh, okay. So I should have done this the other way around. Window, we should have done this first. In fact, I don't know why he put this. Did I put it in the same place he did? Seems to make more sense that this would happen first, right? You have to do the key down would be the first thing that happens before the transition happens. So we'll come back to let's scratch that. We'll go to key down first. Okay. Window.add event listener. So we're adding event listener to everything. The whole spiel, the whole thing, right? Anything that happens anywhere in here where key down happens, somebody presses a key, we're going to run this function play sound. Okay, so let's look at this function play sound. So there's the event, right? The key down event. We're going to take the event. And there's a bunch of information that's attached to the event, which I'm sorry we're going to get to. We're going to say set a constant variable called audio that is filled with this information. Query selector. It's not query selector all, so it's not a known list. It's just one thing. We're looking for something. When this event is fired, we're going to make one audio variable that is query selector, an audio element, which is one of these guys, and we're looking for a certain one that has a property, right, of a data key with a certain value. Okay, and so the value of the key code, whenever you press a key, it has a key code associated with it, right? So we can get that key code because it's one of those many pieces of information that are on an event. When you press a key event has a key code as part of its information. So this is just that ES6 we're saying get the key code property from the event. And so we're storing that key code. Well, we're storing the element that has a key code of whatever key was pressed. Okay, so that's what the audio is. And then we're doing constant key. What's the key going to be? Document query selector. So again, it's one item, one element that has a. So this was an audio element. Now we're looking for something that has a class of key, which were all of these guys back here, these divs. It has a class of key, and again, the same sort of thing that has a property data key of that same key code. So we're sort of matching up the audio to the div, right? Which makes sense. Okay, so if you look, the 65 is the A key. We're just going to associate that with the 65 audio clip. So that's basically the whole point of here. We're finding a way to sort of connect them or refer to them more easily. So the audio and the key, whenever play sound is called, we have access to the audio and the key that go together. So we're saying, okay, so what is this part? If the audio, if this sound, if this one doesn't exist, if this, oh, so it was for this, the point of this was if you press a key that is not one of our keys that we're looking for, it just stops. It won't do anything. Okay, it won't give you an error. It's basically an error, handling an error. You know, so just if it's not one of these, just don't do anything. Forget about it. Don't cause me any trouble, right? All right. So then audio, apparently there are some properties that are attached to the audio that we can set here. Audio.current time equals 0. That okay, so when you go to play, when you hit the event, the key down event to play the sound, it automatically sets the current time of the audio back to 0. And the reason he was doing that was because some of the sounds are really long, like this. It lasts almost 2 seconds, right? So it won't play the next audio. So if you hit those keys twice in a row, it won't play until the sound finishes playing. So if you wanted to do really fast, it won't let you do it. It'll go ting, ting, and away it goes all the way through. So in this is the way he made it so that it'll go faster. So as soon as you hit the play sound again, it doesn't have to wait. It sets the current time to 0, or as he said, rewind to start. And then what happens is it plays the audio. So the audio element has a method apparently called play, which is what plays this sound that's associated with it. And also what we did here, we took the key, which was, as you recall, was the divs, right? Above, not the audio portion, it was the div, and added a class of playing to it. Okay, and the playing class is, this is like the default styles over to it. The class playing is the yellow outline and the sort of pulsing sort of shape. Okay. Then what happened next? For each one of these things, we added, this is now, so now we're back to this. The keys, right? So the keys were query selector, all the divs that have a class of key, which is all the divs, right? Okay. So we're saying for each one of them, we're going to add another event listener. Before, the event listener was on the whole window, right? Where anytime we're getting a key press, we don't need to listen for everything again. We did it in a more defined way here for listening for the keys, and adding it. The for each is adding, way to loop through it, so we can add event listener to all of them the same way, rather than having to write 9 different event listeners. We can just loop through the list of the divs and add the same event listener to every one of them. And what we're listening for is the transition to end. I kept writing transitioned, like without the N, like, and I couldn't figure out for the longest time why it wasn't working. It's 2 words, transition, end, not transitioned. Anyway, so we're listening for the transition to stop, and what happens when the transition stops? Okay, we'll do this, because remember, that's how event listeners work. You look for the event that you want to happen, and then what do you want to do when that happens, right? So that's the two pieces of this. So the transition stops, or it does the CSS transition and changes from the default to the yellow outline, right? And this is how it makes it go back to the default, is it waits for the transition to end, and it's removing the transition. So how does that work? This also takes the event that's associated with it. So we have access to a couple of things on the information from the event. And we're saying if the property name does not equal transform, return. So there's a bunch of stuff that happens on that event, right? and some of them are not the transforming the CSS, right? So if it's not that one that we're looking for, just don't do anything. So, but it, it's going to happen here. So we're going to say this dot class list. And before, when I started talking about this, remember we said that this is the div that's calling the function, right? So it's the div. We're going to remove the class list of playing. So up here, when we play the sound, we're adding the class list playing, or the class playing, and when the transition, as soon as the transition is done, we're removing the class list. So that's how it goes. You'll see it turns yellow, then it immediately goes back to the default. So it adds it and then takes it away. And that's basically it. Okay. I'm sure Wes walks through it a little better than I do, obviously. But again, I'm doing these videos just as much for myself as I am for anybody else. So there's another one. Hopefully I'll do another one tomorrow. Talk to you folks next time. Thanks for watching.